Alright guys, so this is an elbow that's been sitting in moss for quite a while. This one was suffering from root rot when I got it. It is absolutely crazy with roots right now. For those who are trying to do moss, definitely a very, very good option. And there you have it. You have a really, really well-rooted elbow that would transition to soil really well now with plenty and plenty and plenty of roots to spare. Hello plant friends, welcome to part 3 of the rooting and propagation series. This is the last part. In part 1 we talked about tips and tricks to propagate and root in water. We also had to deal with some root rot issues on camera. In part 2 we talked about propagating in moss and transitioning your water cutting to moss or perlite. And then in this part, we are going to talk about the next step. All right, I think I have one more specimen to share with you guys and for us to talk about. Oh, hold up. Okay, all right, let's look at this specimen here. Okay, so this is, I guess, a more advanced stage, right? So remember, let me see. So remember our water cutting, right? And then again, without leaves, and then it turns into something like this. We have an outbud or an outgrowth, and then you turns into something like this. So this is again, this is two plants again in one pot. This was one trunk. This was another trunk, right? So once they had enough roots, I plopped them here, and then this is what I got. So these two trunks were actually plopped down at the same time. So you can see that sometimes you get a lot of growth within a certain amount of time, and then sometimes you don't. So this small one actually did not do anything, even though they had the same amount of roots, even though if you look at the trunks, they're both the same amount of green. This trunk did nothing for about, I would say about 4 months. And this guy was starting to really grow. So I actually thought that this trunk was just a goner. I thought that it was probably like either all dried out or it just wasn't going to make it. And if you look, I don't think it shows well on camera, is that this trunk, if you look at the top, is very wrinkly. The top, it's really dry, right? Like I think this whole part up here is probably gone. So 4 months in, it really wasn't doing anything. So I thought it was just a goner. I was too lazy to repot it, but if I was less lazy, I would have taken this one out and probably just threw it away. I really thought it was a goner, but again, I was just too lazy, and thank goodness, because this thing started popping out, and it started popping out from a node that's actually under the soil. So that's absolutely wonderful. There we go. Laziness. There are some good things that come out of laziness, right? Okay, so let me see what else is there to say. Okay, so I think what we can learn from this is that plants take their own time, right? Sometimes in a month you'll start seeing some leaves pop out, and then other times nothing happens at all for several months. Okay, so if it's not taking up space, if it's not doing anything, just let it be for a while, right? Unless it totally rots and you can tell, or it totally shrivels up and you can tell. But give your cuttings a couple months. Okay, so that was that. The other thing, let's look at this big guy, right? So this big guy now has 3 leaves. very well variegated. Oh, look at this one. Very well variegated, right? It's very nice. Very well variegated. If you look at the trunk, the mother trunk, you would not expect that, right? It looks this trunk looks very, very green, not that well variegated. Even this main trunk looks very, very green, but the leaves turned out really, really well, and the new stems are getting more variegated. So that's absolutely wonderful. You have a lot of aerial roots, right? This like large aerial roots here, good sizes. But there's something to be said about the aesthetics of this, right? It's not the prettiest thing, right? This is not going to be on the cover of Aroid magazine, right? Or any plant magazine, right? These two trunks sticking out, very noticeable, not the most picturesque interior design plant, right? Right, like it's just not there. So this is bound to happen, right? This is bound to happen. This plant, right, is going to be the same thing. This is going to grow into this plant. So what happens? What do you do? Well, you kind of just, in this situation, again, if I were less lazy and this bothered me that much, and I also, like, if I didn't have other elbows, that is perfectly fine. What I would do is that I would probably cut it here, right? And then propagate this segment. I would cut it here, right? And propagate this segment. And what does that mean? That means that put it back in water, right? I have some roots. I have some area roots that, again, remember, are not soil roots. They're not ready for the soil, but the specimen looks good. I have a couple nodes. Yeah, if I wanted to, I could just plop it. I cut it here, put this in soil, or put this in water, propagate it in water, repeat the process. That's what I would do. Repeat the process, and then hopefully, as I get more roots down here, then I can just plant this guy upright in soil or in perlite or moss. Repeat the same process, and then this will turn into a more upright and visually appealing plant. Also, when I'm doing that, I can probably be hopeful that I can get another plant or two out of this guy, right? So plop this cut right here, propagate this top thing in water, and then hopefully, because this plant has a lot of roots, should have a lot of energy stored in it now because the leaves are so good. I'm hoping that this trunk, I'll have another plant coming out of it. Again, that's not a guarantee, but since I have this trunk here anyway, why not try, right? There's no guarantee though, because again, once I cut this off, this area will dry up. I'm unsure if it will affect the node. I'm unsure if this guy has enough energy still. But as long as I give it a good chop a little further away from the trunk, even if that part dries up, the node should still be unaffected, and I'm hoping that I can get another plant out. So that's going to happen. I suspect that that's probably going to happen, sometime this summer that I'll do it. But yeah, I think this pot is really, really fun. It's actually one of my more amusing plants. So I actually like it a lot the way it is. I have a thing for quirky plants. I have a thing for quirky and quirky leaves, quirky structures. I have a thing for imperfect plants, right? Plants that tell a story. And obviously, I've been talking about this plant for a while now. So this pot and these specimens definitely have a story. All right, okay. If you're wondering what happened to like the top and the rest of the other parts went to their homes like ages and ages ago. So now I have these little This one. In this series, we went from rooting cuttings in water and then transitioning them outside of water to moss or soil to the point where they're old and mature and stable enough where we can repeat the process. This does take a lot of time, and along the way, lots of things can go wrong. Is all this time and risk worth the cost savings of buying and propagating cuttings? For those who enjoy it, it is a very satisfying and fulfilling part of the hobby. I do feel that all hobbyists and collectors should go through this process at least once. And I do think that going through it is sort of a rite of passage that improves your skills as a grower, and it also makes you feel a lot more confident in your growing capacity. All right, guys. I hope you guys enjoyed this episode. I know it's long. I know it's there were a couple of tangents here and there, and it was a little bit all over the place. But I tried to fit in as much. As many thoughts and things that I could think about regarding propagation and rooting. Is there anything else that I'm missing? You have any other questions, other concerns, anything you disagree with me about? Plop it in the comments below. Hope you guys hope you guys subscribe. All right, till next time, happy planting.